quote Marie, babe, you're not sustainable.
I've got a question for you. Since you've become more conscious, is there something that you've been really missing? Like, since you've been more aware of your purchases?
Well, in terms of food, I think I've said before, avocados. I really, really miss them. And I find as well, a lot of kind of vegetarian and vegan meals involve avocados. And it's like, oh, they're just so tasty. Honestly, one of my treats is waking up in the morning and having avocado on toast with a bit of smoked paprika, and it's my favorite. And I do sometimes have avocados, I just don't buy them as much. I really miss them. And then in terms of plastic, I just miss being able to go into the shops and just buy loads of crap. So, like, I just want a packet of Haribo strawberries or something. Again, this is all food-based, so yeah.
Mine's food-based as well. I came up with this question today as I was, like, shopping for my lunch, and my eyes drifted to the, like, sweets next to the checkout to a Kinder Egg. I really miss Kinder Eggs.
Kinder Eggs are brilliant.
Yeah, I really miss them. But they're a ripoff, essentially, because you barely get any chocolate, and it's all just like plastic in the inside.
It's not another chocolate that's like that chocolate, because it's like a milk chocolate with a white chocolate inside. Food is the thing that we're most missing.
Yeah, that's
a good question. That's really good.
Yeah. We'll post it on our Instagram stories. Let us know if there's like something like...
I want something really niche that someone's missing. Again, like a Kinder Egg.
I'm missing Kinder Egg.
So what have you been up to this week? Have you got any sustainable fails?
While we're on the topic of food, this has nothing to do with our main subject, but we are talking about food right now. I had a very, very big fail with some soy mincemeat that I bought from Lidl. It was honestly one of the worst culinary experiences of my life.
Wait, so what is soy mincemeat? I don't think is it literally mushed up soybeans?
I do not know, because it was in Portuguese. That's like another hindrance. It's in Portuguese. Because that's the same. The word for soy is the same as in Portuguese, but the rest of the ingredients, I have no idea. But it looked like minced meat. That was the point. And I think that's where I went wrong, because you can get dried soy flakes that I'm still yet to try that cook and they're better, but this one was like made to look like minced meat. I didn't see the point once I started cooking with it, because like, you know, like if you actually cook real minced meat, you put it in the pan and then it starts falling apart because it's minced. This wasn't that. It was just like
a clump. Solid.
It was just solid. I put it in, it starts to smell really strange. And then, because I think they use some kind of dye to dye it a mincemeat color, that dye starts seeping out.
That's a red flag.
Staining all my onions bright pink. And even though this is vegan and there's no animal products used, it looked like blood. It was a horror show. And it just got worse as it went on. In the end, the flavor, I had to throw it away. I couldn't eat it. What about you?
I might move away from food just because that was gross. So, you know what? I had a sustainable win, and it relates a bit to this episode, actually. I, for once, have an occasion to go to this weekend as we're at a lockdown and we can actually finally go to things. Now, I've always found dressing for various occasions like weddings, parties, etc. so difficult because they're all really specific and with different groups of people. Whereas like I have clothes for just lounging around, exercise, everything in between, absolutely fine. I always find the need to look for something else if I'm going for a special occasion. So I've kind of put my foot down and gone, hang on, I'm just going to rent, because I'll buy something for an occasion and then I will never wear it again. Like, I'm not the person that goes to a million weddings a year, even though I wish I was. So I decided to rent. So I did a bit of research, and there's so many more renting platforms now, which is really, really cool. And I stumbled upon Her, H-U-R. And basically on Her, loads of people rent out dresses, tops, everything. They're usually a bit more kind of designer, so it's stuff you like I couldn't usually afford, but renting it I can afford it and be a bit more bougie. So I spent a little bit of time looking through it, and I found a lovely dress that kind of hit the criteria for the occasion, and I've rented it out for a week. It's really cool because you just message the person who's renting it and you decide between you how long you're going to rent it for, and it arrived and it's a lovely dress and I'm really happy with it. So if anyone's in the same kind of struggle as me, going to an occasion and going, I literally have nothing to wear, I have stuff for occasions but just not this occasion, please try renting. It's really lovely. Like, you can go a bit out of your comfort zone with it as well in terms of what you would wear. So yeah, really impressed. I thought it wouldn't work and I'm like, actually this is a really good solution. So yeah, try renting.
So, is it just another person like renting out their clothes?
Yeah, it's kind of like eBay. Like, you know, you can message the seller. You have to message the renter or the rentee. No, I'm the rentee. You message the renter and you kind of just organize when it will be sent and then when it will be sent back. It's obviously more expensive the longer you have it for, but it's really simple. You can even get, if you pay a little bit extra, you can get insurance on it. So if you stain it a little bit, as you might do going to an occasion with drinks, then you're covered basically. But yeah, I've been very, very impressed. And that's not to say that you can't just, you know, go around your mates and ask to borrow stuff. That's equally as good. Definitely would recommend renting. Good sustainable win.
Kind of reminds me of Rent a Swag from Parks and Recreations.
That's what I've been doing. Rent a swag.
Yeah. Where you describe that business model. But yeah, renting is a great option and also a perfect transition.
You're welcome.
It's just like we planned. To our topic for today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Girls, One Reusable Cup, your sustainable support group, the podcast about navigating the fads and foes of living a low-waste lifestyle in your 20s. I'm Marie, and as always, I am joined with the lovely Beth.
Hello.
And today, we will be tackling the enormous topic of fashion. This topic is one we will probably revisit quite frequently on the podcast. It is the one topic where I can kind of confidently say I know what I'm talking about. Because I have a BA in fashion. I've been working in sustainable fashion for the past 2 years, and I also volunteer for Slow Fashion Movement. And it's safe to say that I'm very passionate about this topic. So when I say fashion or the fashion industry, what do you think about that?
So I think about constant in your face, always changing is the way I see fashion.
That's a good way to put it. Constant in your face, always changing. I like that. The fashion industry is like an umbrella term because it covers a variety of industries and also a variety of jobs. And to give this episode some structure, I'm going to use the lovely turtleneck that you're wearing as like a roadmap to give us a clearer story of the fashion industry. Now, I would like to say that I'm like Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada, where I just saw this and was able to break it down immediately. I'm not that good. We didn't discuss this in advance. I did see the care label in advance, so there is some planning. So
we all dream
my favorite scene. That, like,
I like the scene where she's like, florals for spring, groundbreaking.
Every time I see like a catwalk in the spring, for spring collection, I think that
it's the best film ever. Go watch it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it inspired my career, but that's a story for another day. So let's first talk about the style. It's a black turtleneck. So what made you choose this style in the first place?
I think because it's timeless and classic. When I was kind of redoing my wardrobe, being a bit more conscious, I just thought, right, I just want a wardrobe of very basic clothing that I can layer. And the black turtleneck I really like because it's such a perfect layering piece. And I'm actually a bit obsessed with turtlenecks. So I have that black turtleneck, and then I also have a sleeveless turtleneck for the summertime. So my whole, like, it's like I'm a character from like an animation. I have like the same outfit on every day, just slightly tweaked. So yeah, I'd say it's classic and timeless and goes with everything. You can't beat a black turtleneck and jeans. Easy go-to outfit.
And I would agree with that. So the turtleneck actually has like a lot of history behind it, and you probably weren't aware of that when you chose this.
Oh, I'm really excited for this, by the way.
I'm gonna like keep it brief, but I'm a massive nerd. This is kind of like my jam.
That's fine. So, go for it. I'm intrigued.
Like, it dates back to like medieval times,
Really?
Knights wore something similar underneath their armor to stop chafing, like around their necks.
Wow, I had no idea knights were so chic.
I mean, it doesn't look like your black one that you do, but like that you currently have. Like, they didn't have the materials for something like that, but like that's the idea. Something that's also classified as a turtleneck in fashion history is like the ruffled cuffs around the neck. I mean, William Shakespeare sported those.
Of
really
course, yes.
well known.
Do you know why they wore them? Was that for a purpose, or was it just fashion, darling?
Both. So it was like a status symbol, like the more ruffles and the more bigger it is, the more higher in status it was. Also, a purpose was to cover up skin conditions. Because Queen Elizabeth I, she was also infamously known for like quite a lot of rufflage around the neck. Rufflage. She had really bad skin as well, so it was also just kind of to hide that as well. So
maybe I'm hiding something from everyone. That's why I'm wearing turtlenecks all the time.
It crossed into women's fashion like early 20th century and really became popular around the 40s and the 50s, kind of moved towards becoming the iconic basic we know today. Audrey Hepburn played a huge role in this because she sported a turtleneck in the movie Funny Face, and that was like one of the standout scenes in the movie, but also one of the standout looks because it just complemented her figure beautifully. And in general, turtlenecks have also kind of become like a garment for activists. So it's also associated with the women's equality movement in the 70s.
Wow, I didn't know it was charged with so much history.
When you think black turtleneck, who do you think of?
I think of Kim Possible, which is what I was trying to do. Sorry, everyone. That's why I was wearing black turtlenecks. I loved Kim Possible as a kid, and I just continued to dress like Kim Possible.
Nice.
Why? Who do you think of?
Steve Jobs.
Of course. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, my go-to is obviously a black turtleneck and jeans. Everyone sends me the picture of The Rock from the 80s. Yes! Everyone sends me that going, this is how you dress.
That is an iconic photo.
I know. So I've been trying just like Kim Possible, but ended up somehow dressing like The Rock. So The Rock's my fashion icon.
That photo is chef's kiss. I love that photo.
If you haven't seen it, we'll post a picture of it. He looks absolutely amazing. So you'll see why he's such an inspiration to me.
Turtleneck falls into the normcore style category, which is unisex fashion, which is like characterized like, it says average looking clothing. I would say basics, like staples.
Yeah.
Because average looking clothing sounds a bit insulting in my opinion.
I know. I thought it said, I just glanced at it and I thought it said average looking people. And I was like, oh yes, I fit into this very well. But, I think basics have really taken off, especially those of us that do capsule wardrobes and lookbooks and stuff. It's all about having basics. So I think actually the turtlenecks are arguably one of the most basic pieces of clothing you could probably have in your wardrobe, to be honest. But I'll support normcore.
So then let's look at the label. It is from New Look, which is categorized as fast fashion.
I'm sorry. To be fair, you didn't mention I have had this black turtleneck for about 5-6 years. It does have holes.
I was going to ask you this. I was going to get
sorry. Defending myself like, I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's fine. No, that's why. It's not new. That question was more down the line, but yes. So it is fast fashion, but you've kept it for a while, which is great. But how would you define fast fashion?
Trendy, accelerated, boohoo.com.
How do you define fast fashion? Boohoo.com.
Boohoo.com. I always have the advert stuck in my head. I hate it, where they're just like all walking around with pouts going boohoo.com, and it lives rent free in my head, and I hate it. But fast fashion.
Good thing I don't live in the UK, so I'm not exposed to that.
Unfortunately. But just really trendy, kind of out there stuff with a short time span.
Yeah, so fast fashion can be defined as cheap, trendy clothing found on the high street that reaches shop floors in breakneck speed to meet consumer demands. The word fast fashion first appeared at the beginning of the 1990s. It was coined by the New York Times when they described Zara's mission to take only 15 days for a garment to go from design stage to being sold in stores.
That's crazy. I mean, Marie, your background's fashion, how long would it take you to create a collection?
I mean, for my university
right.
collection, it took me a whole year. Currently, where I work, we put out 2 collections a year, and that is like basically almost split evenly, where we work 6 months on one collection and then 6 months on the other collection. And sometimes even then we can't get it done. Done.
Can you imagine condensing that into 15 days of coming up with the idea, the research, then creating
There is no research in fast fashion. Like,
it's a brain dump.
Exactly. There's this thing like called trend forecasting. Essentially, the trend forecast comes out because I know someone who actually worked for Zara for a bit, not long because they had to leave. And then, for example, like it comes out that, oh, stripes are trendy. That morning, you just design stripy tops, you send it off, it gets made, and then put it in the store. It's
so unnatural. Yeah.
Oh God. And as a designer, it just makes me shudder. Like, it's not a healthy work environment in general. And this is only for the designer. We haven't even gotten to the labor part yet. Yeah. So in general, the term referring to just the sheer volume of clothes a brand puts out. And it's why fast fashion will never be sustainable, because the amount of fashion they keep producing. So that is something that you see like quite a lot. On New Look's website, there was also like a sustainability target. But if brands keep putting out massive volumes of clothes, that is not sustainable.
There's no point, is there? Yeah.
There's no point, because sustainability, like many people don't even realize, doesn't just refer to the material. It refers also to the process. And like, if sustainability is balance, essentially. So if a company claims they're sustainable, but they're still putting out massive volumes of clothes and using slave labor, babe, you're not sustainable.
Quote, babe, you're not sustainable. No. Oh, you know what gets me is when these brands create clothing that has slogans on them, and it's like they randomly churn out the slogans, and it's the ones that are like, there's no planet B and I am sustainable or something. And it's like, that's so ironic that you printed that on clothing that you produce.
I was in a store the other day that claimed to be a sustainable shop, and they had a tote bag that said, shopping is cheaper than therapy.
I want someone to do a roundup of all of these clothes and bags that just have ironic statements on them, because they really make me chuckle. They make me cry inside, but they really make me chuckle. But yeah, as Marie said, there's a lot around greenwashing, and they do make statements to be doing stuff, which is great. But if their whole business model is just using a ton of resources and constantly churning stuff out, then, quote Marie, babe, you're not sustainable. So, yeah. Marie, for people who don't live in the UK, could you tell us a bit more about what New Look is?
Yeah, so New Look is a UK fashion brand. They opened their doors in 1969, and it was initially a single fashion store, but then rapidly grew to become one of the global chains we know today. So I think you can also get New Look outside the UK.
Yeah, they're very similar to H&M, really.
Yeah, I want to say H&M with a bit more youth. I don't know. That's maybe like...
I think New Look... I've grown out of New... I mean, I don't shop there because morals, but I think New Look's gone a bit young now. So actually, I don't think I'm their target audience anymore. But in terms of how they operate, they are very similar to H&M. But that's kind of one of the go-to high street stores in the UK.
We've already talked about the factors that affect this, but because you know the brand, how sustainable do you think New Look is?
So I don't know if it's because of their marketing, but I would always think they were better than, like, for example, H&M and Zara. I don't think they're very sustainable because, one, the clothes are very, very affordable, which worries me. And two, like you said, I walk past New Look on the way to work, and every week there's new stuff in the window, and that doesn't seem right. And they always have sales on with stuff from last month, so they're constantly churning stuff out. So probably not very sustainable.
And the twist is, no, you're completely right. So on the Fashion Revolution Transparency Index, which is like this massive evaluation Fashion Revolution does each year, where they send out a questionnaire and have companies answer it, they scored a 34% overall. And on Good On You, which is an app that rates
that's brilliant,
how Sustainable?
You've gone Australian. Sustainable.
Good on you. An app that rates how sustainable a brand has a new look rated as not good enough. Now, when I checked earlier today, it did say that this rating was currently in review, so it might go up. I don't know what that means, but currently, yeah, it stands as not good enough because none of its supply chains are certified by labor standards, which ensure workers' health and safety and a living wage or other labor rights. So they don't have any certifications.
Yeah, and actually, they've never really talked about that in terms of when you go into the shop or online marketing or anything. I feel like, I know Primark's had their problems, but they're a bit more open about talking about it, whereas New Look, I don't think's ever mentioned it, and I guess that makes sense because they're not certified.
Yeah, they did score higher than Primark, though. I did check.
I mean, is that hard to do?
On this label, in like big letters, and also on the top, it says it twice. It says made in the UK.
Which I was surprised about, actually, because I think one of my very few pieces of clothing that is made in the UK.
What does that tell you?
I'm a bit worried to find out, if I'm honest with you. If I knew nothing, I would see that and go, oh, brilliant. Like, it hasn't traveled far to get to the shop, less emissions, you know, the whole, like, everyone's on the whole local train at the moment. I would, and this is horrible, I'd see that and go, that's better than it being made in China. But I bet you're going to tell me that it makes no difference.
Yeah, it says made in the UK, but effectively it tells you nothing. Where in the UK is it made? The UK is actually quite a big place. Who made it? Hashtag who made my clothes. Were they paid a good living wage? It essentially tells you nothing. It gives you the impression that it's better.
Yeah, and they know they're doing that. I think that's a very clever tactic. I mean, can you imagine if all clothing had to have a tag on it that said who made their clothes and how much they were paid? Kind of like food menus now in restaurants, they have to put calories and stuff on there. Like, can you imagine if the same thing happened with clothing? Hashtag exposed.
Like, that is like a great point. And actually, there's one that I actually bring up quite a lot when I'm talking about policy, because I think we should take a lot of inspiration about the food industry from the food industry. Because if you like buy something at a supermarket and all it says is like a generic location, like it's from the UK, you're like, but where? Is it bio? Does it contain any preservatives? Food labels do tell you nearly everything. Yeah. And for a while they didn't. And then legislation came into place that said you needed to give more information about the food you eat. Like, it's not anyone just hand you a burrito and say, here, eat this.
You'd be like, no, oh gosh, no, I don't trust this.
And you don't know the contents of it. You don't know where it's made. You don't know, like, if the meat was cooked properly. Like, would you eat it?
Oh gosh, no. No, it's all about trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't trust your clothing, you shouldn't wear it.
I think that is a good point.
That's a very good example, actually. I love that your mind also goes just to a burrito. That's like your go-to food. But Marie's got a really good point, though. Like, that's how most people think of food. We should think of the clothes we wear exactly the same. They don't just appear out of nowhere. And I think actually that's with a lot of stuff, all the objects in our lives and stuff. I don't think people actually think anymore, how was this made? Where did it come from? Because everything's just so immediate and easy to access. It literally sometimes feels like it just appears out of nowhere.
Spoilers, it doesn't.
Sorry everyone. Plot twist.
So let's talk about labor. The fashion industry is modern slavery. There's no other way to put it. Most of our clothes are made in countries in which workers' rights are limited or even non-existent. Garment workers don't have a living wage. Factories don't have proper safety measures in place. The clothes are just produced under horrible conditions. The fashion industry has been host to many tragedies. One of the most famous and well-known is the Rana Plaza tragedy in 2013, which birthed fashion revolution. This wasn't an isolated event. There were many tragedies that happened before, but now even after Rana Plaza. It's an ongoing problem. There have been measures put in place. There is the Bangladesh Fire and Building Safety Accord, which was introduced after Rana Plaza and renewed last year. It still didn't fix all the problems and a very long road ahead of us.
Marie's right. These problems still happen. And I mean, we said about my turtleneck being made in the UK. That doesn't mean all them problems go away. Sweatshops are a thing that we've known about for quite a while.
Yeah. And I think like people associate sweatshops as an overseas problem. problem. And just because it's made in the UK does not mean that these problems go away. The city that Beth and I met in, Leicester, has a huge sweatshop problem. Now, I looked on the New Look website and they do detail where their factories are located, and they have 13 factories in the UK, but they don't give a specific location. So I cannot say like these are the Leicester factories, but I cannot say that either. And more than likely, they're manufactured in Leicester if they're made in the UK. That's it's just like an educated guess.
Yeah, it's probably worse that they've not disclosed this anywhere. I mean, if they're going to be transparent about all their sustainable values and stuff, that should be really at the forefront. They should be transparent about that. And I think actually a lot of fast fashion brands have the same sort of problem. So we can't presume, but it is not good that they've not made this clear.
Yeah, and the two other biggest culprits that manufacture in the UK and do where it's also very well documented that they don't pay their workers a proper living wage is Pretty Little Thing / Boohoo. They're owned by the same. Because they're owned by the same people. Let's move further down the label and talk about materials. Now, I can see that this turtleneck is made out of 97% viscose and 3% elastane. Do you know what those words mean?
You know what? I really wish I did, because it makes doing laundry so difficult. I have no idea what to wash it as. But I'm going to guess that these are all synthetics. They're all polyester-y. They're plastic, basically.
They're not plastic, but they are synthetic. Viscose is one of the third most used textiles fibers in the world. It is actually very common. Viscose is also known as rayon, and it is made out of wood pulp. So it is classed as a semi-synthetic fiber.
I'm so surprised that's from kind of natural sources, because whenever I see viscose or something like that, I think synthetic. And if I think synthetic, I think plastic. Maybe that's just me being silly, but I'm very surprised that that's not made of something really artificial.
Yeah, synthetic doesn't actually mean plastic.
It's man-made. Does synthetic mean man-made?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that doesn't necessarily mean plastic. Viscose was invented in France. It's actually quite an old fiber in 1883 as a cheaper alternative to silk. And the characteristics of viscose is that it has like this smooth, soft texture. It has a silky feel. It's highly breakable, especially when it's wet. It's also highly flammable, which is why in big red letters on your label, it says keep away from fire.
Been doing a good job of that so far, don't you worry.
It also, the fiber tends to shrink and it's very prone to wrinkles. So those are the characteristics of viscose. Viscose is often stated as a sustainable, now I say sustainable in quotation marks, alternative to cotton or polyester. And it's very popular in industry as a cheaper and more durable alternative to silk. So yeah, you mentioned its natural origins.
But there's always a but.
Yeah. There's always a but. So viscose is derived from cellulose or wood pulp from fast-growing trees, are also regenerative trees, such as eucalyptus, beech, pine, as well as plants such as bamboo, soy, and sugarcane. The cellulose material is dissolved in a chemical solution that produces a pulpy viscose substance, which is then spun into fiber that can be made into threads.
Okay, so it's a natural material and then it's been processed.
Exactly. And it's with the chemicals where the problem lies. So this is why when you see viscose, it's sometimes categorized as a natural fabric, which technically is not wrong because it does originate from trees. It has a natural origin, but the processing and how it gets to fiber is very, very, very not natural and uses quite a few harmful chemicals. And the production process contributes to high-level greenhouse gas emissions.
Oh, I was waiting for that. There's always emissions in there somewhere, isn't there?
Yeah, and also these emissions have also the potential of creating major environmental problems, especially with the discharge if it's untreated.
Yeah. So does it have to go through all these processes to get to the end result? Can we not use it in its basic form? Okay.
Yes, you see, because you do have to turn the wood into fiber, and there are certain ways you can make sure that the viscose is from a factory that has a proper regenerative tree campaign that makes sure that once they cut down a tree, they regrow it. And if they make sure that their discharge is treated before it runs off. So those are the two things that could make viscose better. However, the better alternative is a material called Lysol, which is also made from wood pulp, but uses a different treatment process. So it's less harmful.
I've never heard of that, and I've certainly not seen it on the high street yet. Is that a relatively new material, or is it something that's been around for ages and we've just not bothered to pick it up?
It's not relatively new. You may have seen it under a different name, tencel.
Yes, I have seen tencel actually.
So yes, so this was like very confusing. I was writing about this a few years ago. Lysol and tencel are actually the same thing, except tencel is a brand. So it's kind of like hot tub jacuzzi kind of thing, where people have now associated the fabric with the like manufacturer. So tencel is copyrighted and
it's a brand. It's not a
it's a material, and they are like environmentally friendly brand. If it's tencel, like someone sells you something that claims to be tencel, it has to be from them, otherwise they get into big trouble because like they own that name.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's the same thing.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so I guess look out for tencel.
Still doesn't beat the king of all fabrics, hemp.
Oh, hemp had to be mentioned. It's a fashion episode.
If we're talking about sustainable fibers, we need to talk about hemp.
It is very true. So elastane, is that also a synthetic fiber?
Yes. So elastane is a lightweight synthetic fiber that is used to give clothes its stretch. So one thing about viscose, it is not very stretchy. And your jumper, I think you may have noticed, it's quite stretchy.
Yeah.
It needs to go over your head. So elastane is introduced to give it its stretch. It is made from a long chain polymer called polyurethane.
Proud of you. Well done.
Honestly, my chemistry teacher would be laughing at me now. The amount of chemistry I've been doing ever since I got into fashion. And the fabric itself is a ribbed fabric, which I know I am the fashion designer here, but how do you describe a ribbed fabric? Like, how would you describe it?
It's kind of, it's like indented slightly. It's like a pattern. It's like strips of material almost. And actually, I think if you are as into turtlenecks as I am, a lot of very tight fitted clothes or like thermals are made from it. It's very difficult to describe if you can't feel it. But yeah, I'd say it's like panels of material and it's like indented. It doesn't look like one piece of material.
And that makes it causes it to be extra stretchy. And turtlenecks are always made out of a stretch material, out of a jersey material, because they don't have like a zip or anything. It's just meant to go over your head. Either a thick or thin jersey is used on your jumper. And I've noticed that the seams are overlocked, not sewn, which is very common for anything jersey. You usually use an overlocker, not a sewing machine, to sew it. So
what's an overlocker, sorry, Marie, for all the people that have no idea, basically?
If you look at your garments, you probably have noticed there's like two types of stitching. There is a like straight stitch where with a sewing machine where like it's like a line, little like indents where the sewing machine goes in and out. And then there's usually, and you find these around hems, like a loopy stitch that kind of like loops. And that is an overlocker. Now, an overlocker uses 4 threads that go through a needle, and it also has like a little blade, so it cuts the fabric as you're sewing it. Although if you're really good, you're actually not meant to cut.
Well, clearly whoever made my turtleneck was not very good.
Because it's only made to like slightly trim in case you have like an little bit of a bump or something.
Okay. That easier to do then than just standard sewing machine?
It depends. I mean, I think it's the same, like, if you know how to sew, you know how to use an overlocker. It's kind of the same thing. They are a bitch to thread up. I can tell you that. That is the most complicated thing. It's why I do not own a domestic overlocker, because I do not have the patience to thread it, because as I said, it requires 4 threads instead of 1. But use-wise, it's pretty much easy. It's just because of how the stitches run across the fabric, it gives it more stretch and stops it from unraveling. So like a straight stitch doesn't give fabric much stretch. So you wouldn't use it.
Okay, so it makes sense for that piece of clothing. Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Now talking about the fabric, we've already highlighted quite a lot of major industries. For example, agricultural, that plays a massive part of the fashion industry, which many people don't realize. Transport is another one. For example, for viscose, like someone has to cut down the trees, has to bring them on a truck, bring them to the processing site. There's already like a lot of different industries involved, a whole host of jobs involved in this as well. So it just kind of shows you like the massive scale of the fashion industry. It's not just a studio a designer like myself designing clothes, sewing them up, and then selling them, that it's just falls under this like massive umbrella.
It's a lot of people and it's a lot of resources.
Exactly. That's a very good way to put it. So your turtleneck is in white. So let's talk about color, even though technically black isn't a color, but we'll skip past that technicality.
So it's been dyed, basically. It's not
exactly
its natural color.
Exactly. The viscose fiber itself is like this pale white color. To get it black, you have to dye it, and it's synthetic dye. Up until the mid-19th century, the primary source of colored dye was natural plants or animals. The first synthetic dye, mauve, which was like a purple color, was invented. And this fact made me laugh so much because it was invented by accident in a failed medical experiment in 1856.
That leaves so many questions unanswered. That also feels like if I was a scientist, I'd accidentally make things I wasn't meant to. I would not end up at the end destination I was trying to get to. If anyone knows, I'm really intrigued to find out what they were actually trying to do.
Did the patient turn purple? I mean, like, what happened there? Like, the book that I found this in gave no context. So just like, yeah, it just said a failed medical experiment.
It makes me think of, have you ever watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or read it?
Done all three. Seen the original, the remake, and read the book.
So I'm thinking of the bit with the child that turns into a blueberry and she turns purple. That's what I think happened.
So textiles can be dyed as a fiber, yarn, or fabric. It generally depends. Yarn dyeing for woven into fabric is common practice with massive batches, whereas dyeing the fabric itself is more common practice with smaller batches. I didn't really find a clear answer to this, so I'm guessing for your jumper, it was dyed before woven into a fabric. But we had a massive debate in the fashion studio about this, like what comes actually first, because we weren't actually quite sure either. Before the dyeing process, the fabric or yarn is often bleached to remove any impurities to make sure that it's a uniform color. More chemicals.
Lovely, lovely chemicals.
And the dyeing process itself is very resource intensive in terms of water, energy, chemicals, and if the dye plant does not have a proper water treatment plant, the dye can just run out into the soil or into a neighboring river in colorful shades.
And I think you've mentioned this before, how hazardous that is to people's health, to animals' health, the environment. It's you think that's something that was more, I don't know, it's a serious problem and they just let it run wild, basically.
I mean, there's some regulations that have been put in place, but again, not enough. And yeah, as you said, dyes are hazardous. They contain carcinogenic metals, copper, zinc, lead, and chromium, and they have long-term effects on the land and on wildlife and the population. So like once it's in the soil, it's pretty difficult to get out.
Basically, you wouldn't want a burrito with copper, zinc, lead, or chromium in it.
I love that we're carrying on the burrito analogy.
We love it. So I'm really surprised to find out that like actually a lot of the problems are coming from the chemicals and the treatment of clothing, sometimes even before it's actually made into a garment, which is mad. A very simple person as myself wouldn't really associate chemicals with clothes. They seem like very separate things.
Yeah, and I think like we've all heard of sweatshops before, like that word is sometimes like not new when I mention it to people. But even for myself, I only found out about this in like my third year of uni, that the dye used in our clothing is very hazardous. I want to say in your purest form, like currently once it's been treated and fixed, you're fine. Like your clothes aren't currently killing you. I don't want to like alarm anyone. This is still like the fabric stage and there's already so much environmental damage.
For one piece of clothing.
We've kind of covered all the processes that like went into making your jumper. Let's talk about care. So you already mentioned this before, but I'm going to test you. Do you know what these care symbols mean?
I don't. I was about to say I'm really excited about this part because I really struggle with knowing how to wash my clothes. And I do look at the label because obviously, I don't know about anyone else, my wardrobe's filled with so many different materials. I do need to see what colours are what, if this is cotton, is this polyester. So I look into that. But then a lot of the time the labels are they're awful. The text is so tiny. I don't know what's going on, Marie. It's a massive stress. So I'm probably not the best person to ask on this, but if I have a little look, I'm going to try and test myself and not look at what they say. The top thing looks like an iron. So I don't know if that means no ironing or please iron, this will wrinkle up to fuck. So make sure you do that. The second one has what looks like a bowl with liquid in that says 40. And I'm wondering if that's the temperature you should wash it at. And then I hate these symbols. So one is just a triangle with an X on it. I have no idea what that means. And then the next to this very similar, they're like boxes and circles with X's in. I don't think anyone knows what these mean. So please enlighten me. It looks like another language.
It does. I don't know if you remember from my uni bedroom, but when I moved out for the first time and as a going away gift, my mom gave me this card that had all these symbols on it. And then like it was in German, but like I'll translate it. And on the bottom it says, "Why don't you go ask your mom?" Kind of like indicating like you're on your own, kid, now. Like now you're doing your washing. And like I work in the industry and I still am not 100% what these symbols mean. I had to look them up. I have like a very handy book that tells me everything. But also in this book that it was like the categories were like American, European, Japanese. So not even like they're different in each country as well. So it's also like adding more confusion.
Who knows what these mean though? My mum certainly didn't tell me what any of these mean. It was very much like you're on your own now. It's like parents know when it's daylight savings and when you need to change your clock. How do they know this? I have no idea. I've relied on my mum for it for years. Like this is the same thing. I've relied on my mum to tell me what these are for years and I don't know how she knows. So please enlighten me to what these symbols mean because I have no idea.
Right. So the little iron, you're right, it's an iron. And what's key in there, it has 2 dots inside. It means like when you're ironing it, iron it on a medium heat. 1 dot means low heat, 3 dots means high heat, 2 dots medium heat. The little key. So not only do you have to look at the symbol, you have to look at the 2 very small dots within the
Which
symbol.
is so difficult because like I said, these labels are tiny. I didn't even know this iron had dots in it. You need a magnifying glass to read all of that.
So you were right with the temperature. It has a little 40 in it and it says, so that it tells you to wash it no higher than 40 degrees. But what's also important is the 2 lines that are underneath it. So the 2 lines mean you have to wash it at a gentle cycle.
Gosh, this is honestly another language. I'm really grateful I'm finally learning this, but it's never displayed anywhere. I'd love a little book or a poster telling me all of this. I would have never guessed that.
The little triangle with the X across it means do not bleach. The rectangle with the circle and the X across it means do not tumble dry.
Oh, I wish I knew that before.
Uh-oh. And the circle with the X over it means do not dry clean.
I hope everyone got all of that because we will be doing a little quiz on our Instagram stories. Pop quiz. But no, I did not know any of that. That's really, really interesting.
So safe to say you haven't been listening to the label.
I can't read the label, mate. Let alone listening to it. But I know.
I thought the tumble dryer one was at least more well known. Like generally for like knits, like anything that's woven, you should not put in a tumble dryer.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way. Don't you worry. But that's really, really, really interesting.
On your label, it also says to dry it flat. Have you been doing that?
No, I don't think I've done any of this. If I'm honest with you.
This is not even a symbol, it's written.
It's in my language. I do think, and I'm guilty of this too, I think there's such a stigma with clothes now. People don't value them the same. I mean, like, for example, I talked earlier, I rented a dress. I've literally not touched it and I've laid it out flat and kept it pristine because it's a really expensive brand and obviously I've rented it out. Whereas before when I would buy fast fashion, because it's so replaceable and there's so much of it, I don't think people look after it the same. I think there's a stigma around that and that's probably maybe why I haven't really cared to look at the label. I will obviously do now. It's obviously really important to look after your clothes because then they last longer, which is what we want. And actually, I think me and Marie will probably do a whole episode on laundry. I know we are definitely adults now because there's so much to it, and actually I don't think there's a lot of information that's clear, especially to me, about laundry and how to care for your clothes properly. So that will be well worth a listen.
Yeah, that's definitely coming down the line. I mean, are we adults? I don't even own my own washing machine, so it's like
that we should call the episode that.
I don't own my own washing machine.
I don't own my own washing machine.
By the way, I just double checked the label. It says it there in English. Do not tumble dry. You have no excuse.
Oh, look, like I said, you can't see. All right, everyone else will back me up. They're tiny. I have to wear glasses anyway. I cannot see any of this.
You're right. And we try not to shame here. Like, this is clothing.
I feel very shamed. Well, you know what I will do is I will print out some information about what these all mean, and I'll stick it on my fridge so now I know.
Not to discourage you even further.
Oh my gosh.
Just because I'm in fashion and I work with materials every day, I looked at your care label and I thought, that's actually not how you care for viscose.
So the label's wrong.
The label's wrong. So you're actually like not meant to like machine wash viscose in general. You meant to hand wash it in cool water. Because as I mentioned in the properties, viscose fiber is very breakable. And I think that's another reason yours is mixed with elastane to give it also not just stretch, but strength as well.
Can I be honest with you? I've never hand washed anything in my life. That's like something from the past. I didn't know we were meant to do that. I haven't got a big metal bucket, Marie.
A sink? Do you have a sink?
Yeah.
I mean, I've hand washed stuff out of necessity when I couldn't afford the washing machine in uni.
So what comes next? What's after care?
Well, I mean, that depends on you. I mean, you said like you've owned this jumper like 7 years, 8 years?
About 5 or 6 years. And I think, like I said, because it's a basic, I'll just keep wearing it. And I must say, it does have holes in it. And it's probably because, as we explained, I have not looked after it. But I will mend it at some point.
Obviously, you're very happy with this turtleneck. And I'm guessing you want to keep it because it's become a staple piece in your wardrobe. But what happens if you've fallen out of love with it?
I'm guessing the big L word.
Yeah, this is again where I'm going to be a downer.
No, it goes to the turtleneck place in the sky. It goes to the wardrobe in the sky.
It goes to the farm.
It goes to the no. It goes to the farm. It doesn't go to the farm.
Unfortunately, more than likely, it will end up in a landfill because, as you mentioned, this turtleneck has had some wear and tear, so donating it is not an option. Brings me to a point that I want to stress. Please, when donating clothes, make sure that they're washed before you donate them, in good condition, no mysterious stains or holes. Basically, donate it as like you would like to find it in a charity shop, because they won't
sell it. Basically,
exactly, they won't sell it because sometimes even if you think, oh, they'll know what to do with it, if they're not able to sell it, they'll throw it out themselves as well.
Definitely. I mean, I used to work in a charity shop as a volunteer, and they're all volunteers, bless them. There's usually not a lot of space. There's a lot of clothes. You see about 2 people ironing everything. It's a charity at the end of the day. Don't just dump stuff on them. And like Marie said, don't give them stuff you wouldn't wear. So really, like, I think donating shouldn't be your first option. It should be looking after it. But if you can't donate, it will then go to the farm.
Yeah, because one of the main reasons, like, obviously, like, this is why I'm currently owning quite a lot of clothes that have holes in them. And yes, I know the irony in that. I am a fashion designer. I know how to sew. But even some of the ones that I currently own are beyond fixing because I haven't also looked after them. They're old. They are not from good brands. They've suffered wear and tear. And now I've just got a pile of clothes because I know what's going to happen to them once I try and throw them out. Because one thing like people might think of is recycling, because some fast fashion brands have now those fancy recycling bins in their stores where you donate.
Yes, I think H&M have just made a big song and dance about it. And I have seen one of their little boxes where you can donate stuff. And I have wondered about that. Will they use all the materials in like new collections? Because I don't think I've seen them talk about that.
It is still very unclear, but of how they're using the fabric. I've seen that some like they're doing processing, but I don't think they're reintroducing it to H&M. They're like introducing it to something else. I am not 100% sure on it. But the problem what I have with those donating bins is like you give clothes and you're immediately given a voucher
to go buy more clothes. Yeah, that's the kicker.
That's my main issue with those recycling bins. Maybe if you were like completely out of options, you could try that. I am not sure about the legitimacy of it. Personally, I don't trust it because just in general, less than 1% of the world's clothes get recycled. It is very difficult to recycle clothes. Because let's take your jumper, for example. It is a blend, which means it is a mix of two different materials. They're made out of two different fibers. So, for example, this jumper, viscose and elastane. And it is very difficult to separate them and bring them back into their core building blocks.
Yeah, like, and I guess let alone do that for every single piece of clothing that is sent to be recycled. That's so much time and resources that I don't think we have.
Exactly. And that is just another problem. And another big problem, which wouldn't be the case with this one because it's black, but another big problem when it comes to clothing recycling is color. There are so many different variations of just one color.
And I can't even imagine what it's like with, we were talking before about them horrible slogan t-shirts and whatnot. And that's like extra printing and vinyl and stuff that goes on top of them. So yeah, I think with anything, when you recycle, if it's a mix of materials, that just makes everything a lot more complicated.
It does. And like it is rare that one clothing is made out of just 100% something, which like usually nearly everything is a blend these days. Complicates everything.
So if we don't want it to go to the big wardrobe in the sky, we can't really donate it, and recycling's out of like not an option. What else can we do?
I think upcycling would be your best choice. You have holes, so like try to find a creative way to patch those holes, see if you can still like get longer use out of it, and if not, you can always turn it into a cleaning rag.
Oh my gosh, my mum does that with all our old clothes, and it's like I don't want to use I don't want to use my sister's old underwear to clean the sink. Maybe I should have said that's my sustainable fail. And you know what? Go on Pinterest because there's some fantastic ways people have upcycled materials. I think one I see a lot is denim. I've seen people make beautiful upcycled denim totes, which are gorgeous. So there's lots of really creative ways people are upcycling, and it means you get to learn to sew, which I'm very bad at. So I would definitely recommend.
I want to disagree with you, but you broke my sewing machine once. So.
Oh, yeah. I thought we weren't going to mention that.
So I've experienced Beth's sewing firsthand. My poor machine.
Lucky. So we've gone on this long journey of who made my turtleneck, looking at the label, which I clearly haven't read enough, seeing where the fabric comes from, who makes the clothes, chemicals dyeing, how to care for the clothes. There's basically a lot goes into making clothes that we don't realise. And I think we need to understand that more, so then we look after our clothes more. So yeah, I guess all I can say is I will be reading the label in a lot of detail from now on.
Yeah, I think that is a good takeaway. I always say the key to sustainability is think. So always think, who made my clothes? Why is this so cheap? I'm, of course, benefiting from getting this top for very cheap, but who is losing out of this exchange? There's always another side to a story, so always think about that. But also, mainly, please think, do I really need this? Don't buy for the sake of buying. So remember, the most sustainable item is the one that's already in your wardrobe. With that being said, thank you for joining us today. If you liked hearing our voices, please share with your friend. Your friend, if you have one.
Your one friend. We think you're all loners.
Please share with your friend. It really helps us out a lot. Give us a thumbs up rating on whatever you're listening to. That helps us out a ton as well. Thank you for spending your time with us. We really appreciate it.
We hope you and your one friend have enjoyed listening to us. Oh, amazing. Thank you, everyone. Bye.